Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee. In the absence of Councillor Hall, who is normally our chair, we just need to elect a chair for this meeting. So, if I could have a proposer and a seconder, please.
I move Councillor Carol Pattison to chair the meeting, please.
Anyone second that? Are we all in agreement? Yes. Okay, Councillor Pattison.
Which is a bit of a tight squeeze, so I think I can just about make it. But and all this technology is new to me, so there's bound to be a few hiccups along the way. But anyway, welcome to this planning committee in Huddersfield Town Hall. Thursday, the 11th of May. Strategic Planning Committee, I should say. I'll go straight to the first item on the agenda, which is membership, and I think we have one substitute. Councillor Eric Firth.
I'm substituting for Councillor Steele.
Thank you. No other apologies. I think we're all here. So I'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we agreed with those? Thank you. Declarations of interest and lobbying. Can I start with Councillor Sokol, please?
None, Chair.
Councillor Firth.
None.
Councillor Paul Davis. Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thanks, Chair. I've been lobbied on item 11, the Farnley Tyres application, and also to a very large extent on the two Oakenshaw applications, 12 and 13, by numerous people in the village, and I have given the usual response, which is
no response.
Well, I can't give you an idea for or against. So those applications.
Councillor Thompson.
None, Chair.
Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Chair. With regard to page 13, item 2021-93006, I regularly attend village meetings in Farnley Tyres where this has been discussed over the years, actually, this application. So I've listened to arguments backward and forward. Where I have given advice, it's been purely about procedural matters. I've not expressed any opinion whatsoever on the merits or demerits of the application. Then moving on to pages 77 to 138, these are the two East Beerley applications. I have received emails about them. Noted these emails, take no action. Thank you.
Thank you. And I myself, I've had emails on item 11, the Farnley Tyres application, but no action taken. Thank you. Admission of the public. This meeting is to be held in public, and we have members of the public here. So, public question time. Is there any public questions?
No.
No? Deputations and petitions. Have we?
None received.
None received. Thank you. Site visit or site visits. We did attend the Farnley Tyres site this morning, and the two applications at Brearley Wastewater Treatment Plant. So those have taken place. Item 10 is the usual information about planning applications that we need to take into account. So we're straight on to then item 11, which is the planning application, conversion of existing barn to form 8 dwellings, erection of 9 dwellings, demolition of redundant agricultural buildings and associated works, listed building within a conservation area. And Katie Chu is going to present this to us. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Katie Chu, case officer of this application at Yew Tree Farm, which is for full planning permission for the conversion of existing barns to form 8 dwellings, the erection of 9 new build dwellings, the demolition of redundant agricultural buildings and associated works. Of note, as Councillor said, several of committee members visited the site this morning and viewed the site from the rear garden of adjacent neighbouring property number 51, The Village. Whilst this presentation and assessment is based solely on application 93006, it is important to note that there are 2 further applications in at the council at this site. These applications relate to 93007, which is for listed building consent and relates solely to the demolition, conversion and alterations made to any of the listed or Kirklees listed buildings. 92969 is an application for the demolition of agricultural buildings within a conservation area and covers the removal of the more modern farm buildings to the south of the site. Given that this full application that we are discussing today would directly impact on any decisions made on the LBC or demolition applications, these are to be dealt with under delegated powers, but any concerns or queries members have on these applications can be discussed today. So this is the application site here. It's adjacent to the Golden Cock Public House, and to the west is St Lucia's Church. There's also residential properties to the east. The site comprises of several vacant agricultural buildings and 3 mature trees which are protected by TPO. The majority of the site is also located within Farnley Tiles Conservation Area and comprises of a number of Grade 2 listed buildings. There are also listed buildings located directly adjacent to the site. So the majority of the application site is allocated for housing in the Kirklees local plan. This is outlined within the orange overlay on the plan here. The relevant assessments have therefore been undertaken whereby it was concluded that the site would be suitable for future housing development and therefore the principle of developing this site for housing is acceptable. However, as you can see, there are a number of constraints within this site. The housing application outlines an indicative housing capacity of 16 dwellings, with the proposal seeking to provide 17. The applicant has provided details in regards to vacant building credit, whereby 2 affordable dwellings are to be provided on site. This is a rounding up of the units, as the developer only needs to provide 1.23 dwellings on site. This is discussed in more detail within sections 10.41, 10.42 and 10.43 of the committee report. As outlined by the red line boundary on this plan, there is a portion of the site which is not allocated for housing and does fall within Greenbelt land. Part of this incursion is simply for the removal of modern agricultural buildings to the south here. As members will have seen within the update, the submitted site layout plan does not wholly reflect the level of incursion into Greenbelt land and would actually result in an incursion of 4.5%, not the 1.8% originally outlined within the committee report. Whilst encroachment into the Greenbelt is deemed to be an appropriate development, officers have weighed the planning balance and consider there to be very special circumstances on this occasion. This is given to the proposed restoration of the listed buildings and the securing of their long-term viable use. This is considered to outweigh the harm caused and therefore the principle of development is deemed to be acceptable. This is a demolition plan of the site. Here you can see we've got the modern agricultural buildings that will be covered under 92969 as well. And the committee report has concluded the demolition of these buildings is not of a concern as they have no heritage significance. The proposals also seek to demolish the existing 2 stone lean-tos on the barn to the front of the site, which relates to plots 1 and 4. This will be discussed in more detail later in the presentation. Part of the former dairy, which relates to plots 6 to 8, is also to be demolished. Again, this will be discussed later. In this section here, we have the existing farmhouse and attached barn, which are Kirklees listed and are to be demolished to allow suitable access into the site. Whilst there is access to the rear, this would require upgrading to allow it as residential access and won't conflict with Greenbelt policies. There is also an access track which runs directly in between the old reading rooms and number 65, The Village. This is a small single track adjacent to the corner on The Village in close proximity to existing residential dwellings. This access would not be the safest or most suitable access into the site, and therefore it's proposed that an access be provided onto the village to the north. Whilst there is an existing access to the front of the site, should it be retained, the access forms a pinch point which is too narrow to accommodate a road, and therefore to increase the width of the road, partial demolition would be required to the listed building number 65, The Village. This is not an option due to its designation, and that is within separate ownership. The only alternative is to demolish the existing farmhouse, of which highway officers have confirmed that access to the front of the site is the only viable option to ensure safe and suitable access, as well as retaining TPO trees T1 and T2. Finally, as mentioned previously, there are 3 TPO trees within the site, 2 of which were originally to be removed, but following a number of discussions with the applicant, agent and trees officer, all 3 of these trees are now to be retained. This slide shows the proposed site plan. I've blown up the area of the converted listing buildings just so it's clearer to see. Here you can see where the proposed new buildings are to be provided in this area here, and this is the replica farmhouse that I discussed earlier that's to replace the existing farmhouse that's to be demolished. A car parking area is shown to the front of the site, and this is to provide 13 spaces for plots 1 to 5 and the existing dwelling number 65, the village. 1 visitor space is also provided in this location. There is a public right-of-way which runs along the western boundary of the site, in between St Lucia's Church and the site. Looking at plots 1 to 4, here you can see the existing and proposed front and rear elevations. These plots relate to a Grade 2 listed barn located towards the front of the site. The proposal seeks to demolish the 2 existing stone lean-tos on the western elevation, and the property is to be subdivided into 4 units, installing first floors and roof lights. Here you can see the lean-tos that are to be removed as well, and this is a photograph of the site. Conservation and Design officers noted that the subdivision of the building will result in some harm, and they do still have some concerns regarding this. However, in terms of the demolition of the lean-tos, they believe the removal of these structures will reveal earlier historic fabric of the barn and will allow for historic openings in the building to be reinstated, and therefore they deem this to be acceptable. Moving on to plot 5, here are the existing and proposed front and rear elevations of plot 5. This building relates to a Grade 2 listed property which adjoins number 65, the village. Number 65 is not forming part of any of this application as it is in separate ownership. The proposal is for the conversion of the attached barn into a 1 3-bed dwelling, and that's this area of the building here. The principle of the conversion is deemed to be acceptable, although conservation and design do require a number of conditions, some of which include the submission of window and door details and how the historic timber roof will be repaired. Details on the retention of the historic stone floor are also requested, should planning permission be granted. These conditions are outlined within section 12 of the committee report. Looking at plots 6 to 8, this is a former dairy and it's also Grade 2 listed. The proposal seeks to convert the structure into 3 residential units with the restoration of the northern and central bays and the demolition and reconstruction of the southern bay outlined in orange on the site layout plan, which I've zoomed past, sorry. Conservation designs do still have concerns in respect of the extent of demolition proposed and advise the applicant to investigate other methods. Although if these are not viable, the wall must be built like for like, and this can be secured via condition. Of note, whilst the building will provide living accommodation across 2 floors, the scale, size and height of this building will remain unchanged, and therefore officers have concluded that the proposals would not appear overbearing or cause any additional overshadowing on neighbouring properties. Here are the proposed floor plans. As you can see to the rear, there will be habitable room windows placed at ground floor level with roof lights provided at first floor level. To overcome concerns with regards to overlooking, the applicant has proposed to install a 1.5 metre high closed boarded timber fence along the western boundary of plots 7 and 8, which is here. Whilst it is acknowledged there is a difference in ground levels between these plots and number 53, the adjacent neighbour, of approximately 0.9 metres, the fence would be set just 0.3 metres higher than the existing boundary treatment adjacent to number 53 and would also be stepped back from this property by approximately 0.9 metres, providing some additional space between the properties. Also of note, the number 53, the village, appears to be dual aspect and therefore would gain light from another window at ground floor level. At first floor level, plots 7 and 8 are to include roof lights which look out towards a neighbouring dwelling. However, there is approximately 15 metre separation distance, and given that the proposals are to provide roof lights rather than a standard window in the elevations, it was concluded that on balance officers have no concerns in regards to overlooking in this instance. This is plot 15, the replica farmhouse. Whilst it is not listed, it is considered to be Kirklees listed, and the applicant does wish to demolish this structure and the adjoining barn to create safe and suitable access into the site to allow development of land to the rear. Whilst Conservation Design officers did previously raise concerns to this demolition following the submission of a structural report and viewing the house during a site visit, it was concluded that the house is in very poor structural condition and has been vacant for a number of years. To allow this will ensure that the site can be developed and to avoid further deterioration of listed buildings within the site. The justification for the demolition is therefore accepted, and a similar style house is to be provided within the site adjacent to the western boundary. Conservation and Design have requested a number of conditions to help mitigate any harm, and these include, but are not limited to, a full recording of the house prior to its demolition, the use of reclaimed stone, and that the demolition shall not be undertaken should the larger development scheme not take place. 9 new build dwellings are proposed, one of which is the replica farmhouse which I have just discussed. As the rest are of a similar design scale, I will focus mainly on the 4 plots to the south of the site which will be most visible from Farnley Road due to their location. These are plots 9, 10, 11 and 12. These dwellings are all to be 2 storeys and built in Yorkshire walling stone with stone slate roofing. Whilst tumbled and dyed stone is outlined on the submitted plans, this material is not deemed to be acceptable, and therefore it is recommended that external material samples are submitted for approval prior to their use to ensure high quality finish. And this is the detached garage which belongs to plot 10. Conservation and Design officers note that following amendments which allowed the removal of large expanses of glass and timber structures, this allowed for the design of new builds to be simplified, and whilst they are still somewhat suburban in nature, they do have traditional references. That being said, conditions are again recommended in terms of materials, doors and window details to ensure a high quality finish. Officers acknowledge that some statutory consultancies do still hold objections to new builds based on their layout, scale and design. However, officers have concluded that the new builds would result in less than substantial harm, which would be outweighed by the public benefits of restoring an important group of listed buildings. Also, the removal of the existing modern agricultural buildings is welcomed as they are considered to have a negative impact on the conservation area. Looking at the proposed street scenes, the top plan shows plots 10, 11 and 12 to the south of the site, with the second plan showing views towards St Lucia's Church to the west, and that's plots 12, 13 and 14 and 15. From looking at this top plan, you can see the levels at plot 12 are to be similar as existing, as well as plot 11. However, when looking at the attached garage, there will be an increase of approximately 1.4 metres in the ground level to provide a level surface for this garage to be constructed. In addition, plot 10 is to have a raised ground level of approximately 0.9 metres when compared to the existing. When looking at the rear elevation, the dwellings have a stepped appearance to one another to add some further differentiation between the properties. From looking at the second plan, it is clear to see there is to be a reduction in the land levels, which will result in the replica farmhouse sitting at a lower height than the existing. And whilst it is noted that plots 13 and 14 will result in an increase in height and massing towards the western boundary, they do provide a larger separation distance from the adjacent public right-of-way of between 5 to 7 metres, and therefore it's considered that this increase in height is somewhat buffered by the separation distances provided. In terms of plots 9 and 10, these dwellings are located the closest to residential properties to the east. Concerns have been raised in regard to plot 9 and the detached garage at plot 10 in terms of impact on residential amenity due to their scale, size and design. The detached garage at plot 10 is to measure 4.29 metres in height and is to be stepped back from the eastern boundary by 1.5 metres. From looking at the submitted section plans, there appears to be a gradual slope up from the eastern boundary into the site, whereby the garage would appear to be set approximately 0.3/0.4 metres above the existing ground level. This is not deemed to be a significant increase in land levels to what currently exists, as the garages to be single-storey in height, and given the restricted nature of the site due to the retention of T4, it has been concluded that on balance the proposals are acceptable. Moving on to plot 9, this dwelling is to be located approximately 6.9 metres away from the adjacent garden of number 51 The Village, and approximately 7 metres from the gable end of that property. Whilst it is acknowledged that there is a difference in land levels, this large separation distance, coupled with the fact that the dwelling is to replace existing large and rundown agricultural buildings, is considered on balance to overcome concerns with regards to the proposal appearing overbearing or overly dominant in this instance. Concerns were also raised about the amount of glazing proposed within plot 9. Given the orientation of this dwelling to neighbouring properties, no direct views could be gained from the rear elevation of plot 9 to habitable room windows belonging to number 51. Furthermore, there is a separation distance of approximately 24 metres between plot 9 and New Lane Barn, and therefore the proposals would be in accordance with the House Builders Design Guide SPD. Several different boundary treatments are proposed throughout the site. These include 1.8 to 1.5 metre close timber boarding fencing, 1.2 high dry stone walling and 1 metre high black metal estate railings. Whilst we welcome the use of dry stone walling and the metal estate railings, there are still some concerns with regards to the proposed timber fencing. Given these concerns, a condition is recommended in relation to details being submitted in respect of boundary treatments prior to their installation, to ensure further discussions are had on this area of the scheme. Furthermore, officers recognise the retention of the dry stone wall to the front of the site and running along the public right-of-way to the west is appropriate and is to be scored fire condition to ensure it is retained and repaired sensitively, with the reuse of materials within the blocking up of the existing access. Should additional materials be required, these must match in terms of stone type, coursing, etc. In terms of landscaping, while details are shown on the submitted layout plan, officers would require further information in terms of the hard and soft landscaping proposed throughout the site, and therefore this could also be secured via condition. Looking at photos, so this is the former dairy, so it's plot 628, and the relationship with the adjacent neighbouring properties number 51 and 53. This is part of the former dairy that's to be demolished, which attaches to the modern agricultural buildings. These are views looking out of the former dairy towards number 51 and 53, the village. This is views into the heart of the site and the modern agricultural buildings which are to be removed. These photos show the existing access and where the proposed access is proposed to be. These are views looking down from Farnley Road into the site here. And these are views looking towards Park Farm to the east. To conclude, the principle of developing the site for housing is deemed to be acceptable. Whilst a number of conditions are proposed, Conservation Design raised no objections, alongside Highways, Environment Health, West Yorkshire Archaeology Advisory Service, LLFA, Yorkshire Water, Trees and the Design and Out Crime Officer. Whilst some statutory consultees such as Historic England and the Council of British Archaeology do still have some concerns, as outlined within my presentation, officers have weighed up the planning balance and have concluded the building out of an allocated housing allocation, provision of 2 on-site affordable dwellings, and the public benefits arising from ensuring the vacant and dilapidated listed buildings within a conservation area are brought back into full use outweigh the harm on this occasion. It is noted that a large number of objections have been received throughout the course of his application, whereby their concerns have been addressed within the committee report, and following numerous discussions, negotiations and revised plans, officers are now in the position to recommend approval of the application subject to conditions and Section 106 contributions which are outlined within the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
So we have some speakers for this application. I've got first down Richard Wood.
I'm Richard Wood and I'm speaking on behalf of the Farnley Tires Community Group. My object is to emphasise the historical importance of this site and the potential effect the proposed development would have on the village. It was mentioned in the Domesday Book and which has a history of going back over 1,000 years. The current proposal suggests that the historical significance of the village has been largely ignored and that a series of new-build urban-style houses is built at a higher level and overlooking important listed buildings and completely dominating them. Advice has been properly sought from those agencies best equipped to give guidance on conservation issues. The Council for British Archaeology state the application takes residential development as its starting point, with proposals that give the greatest weight to large new build development rather than maximising the opportunities for interesting homes in the historic setting at the front of this site. The use of the area at the north side of the site facing onto the village for car parking would be wholly inappropriate. We object to this proposal and recommend that it be redrawn or otherwise refused. Historic England, too, have submitted several letters which were all critical of the earlier proposals, and in response to this most recent one say, the proposals have been amended to move one detached dwelling in the southeast corner of the site. This has slightly improved the impact on views towards the conservation area from the south, but our fundamental concerns about the urban character of the development and the lack of response to the historic character of the site have not been addressed. Minor cosmetic changes to the exterior of the proposed new housing have been made, but the fundamental issues of the form, scale and character of the development remain. Our position, therefore, remains the same as in February. Bearing in mind the great weight which should be given to the conservation of designated heritage assets, we recommend that consent is not granted for the development as submitted. Each authority has given unequivocal advice that the historical importance of this site must take precedence over the need to provide new housing. Most certainly there is a need to convert what is already vacant
You
to
have
provide
half a minute left.
affordable housing with some new builds. But alongside this, it does not follow that new, very large urban-style houses, as proposed, must be considered appropriate. Do please reject this controversial proposal as it now stands.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we've now got Keith Bellwood.
Good afternoon. I'm Keith Bellwood and I'm speaking on behalf of the Farnley Ties Community Group. We note in the pre-application response and the officer's report recommended that a traditional farm-style dwelling approach is adopted, but there could be scope to incorporate some contemporary elements. Development should be pulled back from the green belt to lessen impact, and we note the officer said that 4.5% of the site is an incursion into the green belt. And careful consideration should be given to designing out any potential overlooking to adjacent gardens of both existing dwellings and those proposed. Fundamentally, we're still very concerned with the suburban style, the size and the height of the new build houses and the detrimental impact they will have on the historic centre of the village. We disagree with the officer's report that there is a slight difference in land levels. The existing ground slopes significantly, which hopefully members noted today. The highest point is in the southwest corner of the site near the church. There's a 5-metre height difference from there with Farnley Road to the east and a 4.5-metre height difference going to the village in the north. Most of the new houses have ground floor levels higher than the existing levels of the farmyard, and the new houses are mostly over 8 metres high. All this results in ridge lines which are significantly higher than the barns being demolished, and we highlight in particular using information obtained from the applicant's submission. Plot 12 in the southwest corner is nearly 3.5 metres higher than the existing barn. Plots 10 and 11 on the south and 13, 14 on the west will be up to 2.8 metres higher. So views into the development from all directions will be negatively affected, and for users of the public right-of-way, there will be a major impact upon openness. We note in the officer's report the new houses among existing development are similar to Park Farm. However, conservation and design state that Beach Farm and Park Farm have limited relevance. Yew Tree Farm is more significant because of its situation and the listed buildings within and adjacent. We also point out that the land at Yew Tree Farm is 13 metres higher than Park Farm. There's been little attempt to mitigate the domineering impact by setting the houses lower into the ground or reducing their height.
You have half a minute left.
Bulky agricultural barns are being replaced by bulky but taller new houses and more suitable to a suburban setting. Therefore, we urge you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker we've got is Malcolm Sizer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Malcolm Sizer, Chartered Town Planner, speaking on behalf of residents adjacent to the development. Dealing firstly with the listed dairy, as you saw on your visit this morning, the conversion is proposed to be 2 storeys with issues of dominating and overlooking habitable windows in the listed dwellings adjacent at 51 and 53 the village. Plots 7 and 8 within the dairy, as proposed, have bedrooms with 2 sets of roof lights, 1 in each elevation. To reduce overlooking of neighbours, I would ask that the bedroom roof lights in the rear elevation are removed. This still leaves the bedrooms with roof lights in the front elevation. If I could draw your attention to the A4 extract drawing showing the new development on plot 9. Plot 9 will be only 2.5 metres to the side of the listed dairy. Its ridge will be 2.6 metres higher than that of the dairy. It will utterly dominate the listed dairy to the detriment of its setting. Third point, with respect to the impact on residents of 51 the village, which you visited, the new house on plot 9 will dominate that property at only 6.8 metres from the common boundary, far less minimum rear garden distance than the 10.5 metres normally required. You will recall that 6.8 metre distance being marked by wheelie bins on your visit. I now refer to the second drawing showing the proposed garage at number 10 at plot 10. The ground floor, in our view, will be 2.5 metres higher than the ground floor of the adjacent dwelling new lathe barn. It will adversely affect the canopy spread of the group of trees in the gardens of 51 The Village and new lathe barn. It should be moved away from the boundary, shortening the length of plot 10's drive. Speaking generally, the applicants have made numerous changes to the proposals to nudge officers to a recommendation of approval. In my view, they have still failed to respect the fundamental requirements set out by officers at pre-application stage, failing to respect the farmyard character of the site, adjacent properties and the green belt boundary. In terms of new build, they have tried to cram a court in a pint pot. I urge you to refuse the application or at least defer to seek fundamental changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more speaker. That's Michael Powell.
Thank you, Chair, members. I'm Michael Powell, a planning consultant at Peacock and Smith, and I'm acting as agent for this application. The scheme that's in front of you is the result of several years of discussions and negotiations with your officers, which started with a pre-application inquiry 4 years ago, public consultation, and the submission of this application 2 years ago in 2021. During this time, we've made significant amendments to the scheme in line with the officers' suggestions, and we now have a really high quality and sensitive redevelopment proposal that's recommended for approval by your officers. The committee report, which makes a full and fair assessment of the proposed scheme, notes the key point that the site's allocated for housing in the adopted local plan, establishing the principle of housing on this site. The report also acknowledges the series of discussions that have taken place between officers and ourselves to get to this position, resulting in the reduction in the number of dwellings, amendments to the layout to avoid impacts on the protected trees, and design revisions in line with heritage comments. The committee report notes that the minor encroachment into the green belt to the south will provide a much neater permanent boundary, in line with the precedent set at the applicant's other recent scheme in Farnley Tyres at Park Farm. There will be no built form within the green belt element, and actually there will be an overall reduction of building within the green belt when the removal of the two substantial agricultural buildings is taken into account, having a positive overall impact on openness. The resulting area to the south will be returned to pasture land. I understand he visited the site this morning and had the opportunity to appreciate that the layout, developed by a local architect, provides a scheme that will make use of the attracted listed buildings within the site and provide a high standard of living. This is not a development by a volume house builder. Volume house builders would not look at a small scheme like this with such complex and bespoke issues. Instead, here we have a local developer and builder with a proven track record who know the area well and take pride in its appearance. This has been evidenced by the developer's other schemes in Farnley Tyres, Park Farm and Beach Farm, which are successful high-quality housing developments that respond well to their local context. So in summary, we support your officer's view that this scheme will provide housing on a sustainable allocated site, ensure the dilapidated listed buildings will be sensitively brought back into use, provide affordable housing and provide public open space. Importantly, this isn't the end of the process, as officers will have the opportunity to scrutinise the detail as the scheme moves forward by way of details required by conditions. If members do have any queries on design elements, the scheme architect, Jake Hinchliffe of Orange Design, is sat here beside me today and happy to answer any questions from you. Thank you very much for your time.
Right, thank you. I think that's the end of the speakers. So members, Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Chair. Where to start? I fully accept that Yew Tree Farm is coded in the local plan as an area for housing development, and I have no objection to that principle. That does not mean that we should uncritically accept these or any other development proposals. Farnley Tyres is a small settlement, and it may appear that in its origins It was centred on what was to become Yew Tree Farm. To my mind, the quintessential English village has, at its heart, the village church and the village pub. The vicar's got to have somewhere to go after Sunday services. In this case, these two institutions are linked by the road, part of the road that's known as the village, and are separated by Yew Tree Farm. This makes the development site the absolute centre of Farnley Tyres. This in turn convinces me that we must take special care in deciding this application. In the officer report, references are made to the recent developments of both of Beech Tree Farm and Park Farm. And it is suggested that certain precedents regarding building design may have been set there. I don't accept such arguments. Both these developments are clearly outside and separate to the village centre, and they're beyond the L-shaped section of road known as the village. This reinforces my belief that we must take exceptional care in deciding this application. For a number of reasons, I am not convinced that the proposed development is sufficiently sympathetic to the village setting. For a start, the development presents its rear to the village centre, as marked by the village, the road, which connects the church and pub. The major feature which the proposed design presents to the village centre is, of all things, a car park. In this respect, I note that paragraph 1066 of the officer report, apart from confirming that car parking should be to the rear or side of a development, informs us that Principle 12 of the House Builders Design Guide cautions that parking to serve dwellings should not dominate streets. The car park here not only dominates the street, it dominates the whole village centre. It makes the village of Farnley Tyres centred on a car park. Again, given the central position of this development, the overlarge houses which dominate the proposals when approaching Farnley Tyres along Farnley Road would fundamentally and irreversibly change the character of the village. It would destroy the concept of an organically developed settlement centred on a 17th century farmstead, replacing it with a view of a generic 21st century suburban settlement, totally out of keeping with the conservation area and the history of Farnley Tyres. I appreciate that there have been a number of amendments to and iterations of specific design details. These notwithstanding, it appears from the report that there remain concerns regarding aspects of both the overall design and of the character of individual units. A recurrent and to me significant concern revolves around the proposed incorporation of elements of the green belt into some of the proposed green areas, garden areas. There are no convincing arguments put forward to justify these incursions. There are no very special circumstances made out. To summarise, I fully accept that the Yew Tree Farm site should be redeveloped as a housing site. I most certainly do not accept that the current proposals are satisfactory. They would cause irreparable harm to the historic setting of Farnley Tyres. They do not interact sympathetically with the surroundings. They do not respect the important location of the site at the centre of the village. An historic village mentioned in the Domesday Book, as we've been told. The proposed development presents its rear to the village centre, with a large car park being the major feature. And there is no justification offered for the encroachment into Greenbelt. These proposals take as both their beginning and end points the financial needs of the developer. They do not pay any attention to the broader historical, cultural and social needs, rights and aspirations of the village and its residents. I'm not in favour, Madam Chair.
Councillor Sokol.
Yours first.
No, it's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Chair, over the years, I've been sitting on this planning committee for longer than anyone else. We have saved so many redundant vacant mills and barn and Kirklees council over the year by granting them either converting those barn or mills into small residential units or employment units. So this barn and family ties, I don't see any difference to them, yeah? I've been on a site visit this Tuesday. I couldn't go this morning. Very kindly, officer took me this Tuesday because I'm not feeling very well. Yeah, I noticed that this barn is right on the very prominent site on the main road, facing to resident terrace houses and the public house, Golden Cock. Yeah. But what I see, I understand the resident concern. Yes, they want to keep it historic building as it is. But what will happen over the next few years? It won't stay this building like this. It might be derelict building, and it will be eyesore to the resident and the public member who visiting on the public house. Here we got the application, and officers spent some time with the applicant to amend the application or to that, and they got the best deal what they could have done, and I think they listened to the resident concern, and the applicant agree to retain those 3 trees, which is the main objection by the resident of Ties, retaining the dry stone wall, which is facing on the main roads. Yeah? And I feel, there is the access to those units will be widened as well. I've seen it. The officer told me on the site. So I think if we leave it as it is, it will become a very eyesore building, and it will cost a lot of money if any future applicant come to save this building. Yeah, I think this is the benefit to the local community, local public member. They get some housing unit there, and the main part of the barn is on the main road, which will be converted into the unit dwellings, 8 dwellings. Yeah, I don't see any reason not to go along with the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor Firth, you wanted to speak?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Sokol has said most of it, but I did benefit by going on the site visit this morning. And to be quite honest, what a mess that site is. It's crying out for development. And having seen the plans, I think it's a sympathetic development where these listed buildings will be retained and put to good use. As Councillor Sokol has said, if it's left much longer, I don't think there'll be anything there to develop. I mean, bring back into use, because the listed buildings will all fall down. The barns, the milking shed, they should have been knocked down years ago. It's an eyesore waiting development. I think this is a smashing proposal, and I wish to propose, I wish to move that we accept officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. I shall go from... It was that way first. Oh, all right. Sorry. Councillor Pinnock, when I lifted my head up, you all got your hands up at the same time. So, Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a derelict site, so we must do something about it. This is a planning application that will do. I got the distinct impression from representations from the village that they weren't particularly happy with some of the aspects of this design. Now, whilst there is a lot to admire in what the applicant is doing, like moving a house, for instance, and incidentally, I think that if it is moved, it ought to be specified that the stone of the original house is used to build the new one, because it doesn't actually put it quite like that in the conditions. I'm not totally sold on all of this, for the reasons that have been brought out by the objectors and by Councillor Armour. Let me deal with the greenbelt bit first. I don't have a problem with that because what's happening there is that the boundaries round the greenbelt in order to demolish some buildings, and it will then be put back to grass. So that's fine. It seems to me is just a device for getting rid of some redundant buildings that are unfortunately in the greenbelt. I don't quite know how to put this. I know there are 2 affordable houses in the development. It's not clear where they are. Are they the 2 houses that are outlined in red near the front of the site?
Through you, Chair. So we haven't actually been told which ones are going to be the affordable housing yet, but that would be dealt with under the Section 106. But it's likely it would be one of the smaller conversions, just because they are smaller.
Yeah. Sorry, I saw these 2 houses with a red line round and jumped to the conclusion. But anyway, there is a danger that villages like this end up by being consisting more of people who are relatively well off, if I can put it like that. And I think there is a degree of importance to ensuring that there is a wider variety of property sizes and so on, so that and this is a subject that is often brought up. People who were brought up in a place have somewhere that they may be able to move into at some point. As I say, I think there are some things to admire in what's being proposed here, but I'm not sure that it quite gets to the point that we need to. I think there are too many large houses there, when some of them could be a bit smaller, particularly the new build houses. Some of the conversions will be relatively small. I'm not at this stage. I'm not willing to support this. I'll leave it at that, I think.
Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. I think many of the points have been covered already. Certainly, it seems to be very much accepted by all parties, the need for development of the site and acceptance within the local plan. I think it's very difficult, isn't it, in the centre of a village to introduce new properties and even converted properties without people feeling that it's disturbing the character and adversely affecting the character of the village. I don't quite see the design of the buildings as being particularly urban, in one sense, particularly through, I think quite sensitive use of materials and some of the designs that I can see on the drawings. However, I can understand the comment in terms of there is a layout of the development which in itself would resemble perhaps many other urban developments in the sense that it is a small development. So I think it's very difficult to get around that one. But from my perspective, I think certainly the applicant and I think officers have done a good job in looking at what they can do to ensure that the designs themselves actually are sympathetic to the area. I think the mix of the housing, and I want to ask officers just to confirm I'm getting this right, there is a mix of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom housing, which on a small development is quite unusual, and really for me it was quite impressive. Taking Councillor Pinnock's point, one thing certainly don't want to see is a development where they're all 4 and particular 5 bedroom houses. So I think there is a mix there that we do have, which is useful. The 2 affordable houses is certainly positive as well. I think the reality, and Councillor Armour's pointed to this in terms of mentioning developers and profit, this is a private developer. Inevitably, private developers wish to make a margin and a profit. I may have different political views and different views about housing, but in reality, if this is a private development, they wish to make a margin. And to make a margin, inevitably, they will have some larger houses as well. As I say, in other discussions, I may disagree with that, but in a planning discussion, then really I think that's to be expected. So I think there has been an attempt to create that mix of housing. I think certainly it appears to me that lots of effort put in to get sympathetic materials and design, and there will be ongoing discussions on that, because that would be something I would raise, because certainly we have to ensure that there continue adjustments on that. The only thing, certainly on the very welcome in terms of the retention of the trees as well. The only thing I wasn't quite clear about, and it's been raised by speakers, again, is this issue of height and overbearingness and where that came. I have been to the site, but not on the visit today, so I didn't have the benefit of some of the discussions today, because unfortunately I couldn't make it. But I'd just like, again, if the officer could just take us through that element again so that we could understand that clearly, because that certainly seems to be a key area. For me, that's the only area left in my mind where I'm not quite certain on. I feel fairly comfortable with the other areas, albeit I can absolutely understand where the residents are coming from on this one.
Thank you. Do you want to come back in on that first?
I just wanted to, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a general point. Katie will take you through the sections, show you the plans again, so you can get some comfort and clarity on it. I just want to make a general point. I absolutely agree that the setting and context is the most important thing for the outcome of this application. I am acutely aware of the representations that we've been receiving. We've asked people 4 times on the sets of plans. You can see the iterations and evolutions it's gone through. You have got a high quality development. You don't have to approve it. You don't have to agree with it, but it is high quality. And it's about whether you feel that it sits comfortably in its context. I would also make a general point that we are going for housing mix, and I think your point is well made, Councillor Davis, that it is hard to achieve in Kirklees on a historic site like this, even in a good housing market area like the one we're talking about now. Nothing is straightforward. It is a challenging set of constraints, value-wise, aspiration, the applicant's aspiration, and making it work, most importantly, for the community it's going in. So for me, I actually think you have got a very good development in front of you and a very good offer on the table in terms of the complete package of what you're going to end up with. And I actually really welcome the fact it's being brought forward by an SME, a local builder. It's not a material consideration, it's a point to make that we want to encourage our Indigenous community building and trades to bring forward difficult sites. And he's done it in other examples around Farnley Tyres and around the region. So I welcome that. I don't take it as a material consideration, but it's an important context that we are facilitating difficult sites that are being brought forward by our own residents and our own businesses. So are you able to take them through that point? Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so we'll just go back to the site sections that we've got. So this plan that should be showing now is it showing? Yeah. This is looking towards St Lucia's Church to the west. So it's quite hard to see on this plan, but there is a red dotted line that shows the existing ground levels that runs up the site. So this is as you enter the site, and this is where the existing farmhouse is. It's quite raised. That's going to be dug out and levelled off to provide the replica farmhouse. And then again, you can see the red line here, so it's going to be reduced again, and then it's going to level off as it gets towards the top of the site. Then looking at, where's me elevations? This is plots 10, 11 and 12, and there are going to be some changes in land levels. Looking from the south, so this is from Farnley Road looking into the site, it's going to be level with the existing agricultural buildings. There will be a slight change in land levels here. It's going to carry on, and then there is actually quite a big difference in land levels on site at the moment. This is going to be infilled to be able to enable some flat access for this garage, and again it's going to be increased further along. And as you take it towards the eastern side of the site, you can see that it's a gentle slope, not as drastic as what's kind of shown here, but yeah.
Okay, Councillor Davis. Yeah. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Just start off with the question that I suppose out of ignorance more than anything, the site is classed as a conservation area but with no heritage benefit. I just wondered if somebody could explain the difference, why somewhere is a conservation area but has no heritage benefit. It's just for pure personal benefit to see if there's any reason why really that I need to know that.
Hi, I'm Sue Brooks, Conservation Officer. So you're asking whether there's heritage benefits in that part of the site?
Yeah, it was said during the presentation that it was a conservation area. It was in a conservation area, but the site had no heritage benefit.
Okay, if I understand that correctly, I would say it's because the existing modern agricultural buildings make a negative impact to that part of the conservation area. So there's no benefit to the rear of the site, whereas the farmstead itself, the historic farmstead, has got huge significance in the village, in the conservation area. Is that what you mean? Does that help? Yeah, I hope that helps.
I think the point is, look at it now, look at how it's been adapted over the last decade and a few decades in terms of agricultural use. It doesn't bring any, those additions, the way it's been used, its recent history, doesn't bring anything to the conservation area, but its original farmstead setting, that's the heritage. That's what the scheme needs to preserve or enhance. That's the test. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for the clarity on that. And there's just another couple of points. One is the trees that are on. It's next to plot 10, or in between plot 9 and 10. There's some existing trees there, which I think there's existing oak, existing silver birch, existing wild cherry. And it looks extremely close to a structure which I believe is the garage for plot 10. I've been on a couple of site visits in the past on heavily treed areas where the housing development has had to be cut down from 3 houses to 1 house because it couldn't interfere at all with the root system or be anywhere near the root system of mature trees. I just wanted clarity that this had been looked at as far as the structure of that garage not going anywhere near the root system of those existing mature trees. That was one point. Then lower down than plot 10, so looking at this picture to the south of Plot 10, it boundaries onto the existing green belt. And a similar question to what's already been asked is there any way that this site could be redeveloped without touching any of the green belt? Because it smacks to me that it's just been done because it gives a particular amount of garden to some of the detached houses on the south side of the plot, rather than it being thought through in a better way so that we didn't have to use any green belt. So that was another point that I wanted to make. The other is, looking at the plot itself, most of my friends and some of my family are dairy farmers, and the last thing that they ever think of is the upkeep of the area in which they're working. They're doing 2 shifts of milking, they're working 7 days, 365 days a year. So as far as the area is concerned, it does need enhancing. That's without question. But I guess as far as the village is concerned, to me that village is an aspirational village. It's somewhere that you'd look forward to live. And are we doing the best that we possibly can as far as enhancing a plot that's right in the middle of a beautiful village? And I would say, looking at it one-dimensionally on this plan, then some of it looks okay, but some of it needs questioning. One is the finish of the dwellings. 2 is the conversion of the existing listed buildings. And 3 is the existing mature trees that are there. So I'm wondering whether this should be deferred to look at a better way in being able to build this plot that takes in a better consideration the existing village and the villagers of Farnley Tyres. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Davis. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I would come in, but I know that Councillor Thompson raised some points. I don't know whether officers want to come in on those first before myself.
Do officers want to come in at this point?
I think it's helpful because we've got some helpful information.
Through you, Chair. So in terms of the trees, we did have an arboricultural impact assessment submitted, but obviously that was when the TPOs were to be removed. So we have recommended that a condition's put on for a new arboricultural impact assessment to be undertaken. So then all them kind of questions about the tree roots will be taken into consideration, as well as, I know there were some concerns about the neighbouring trees where Plot 10 garage is. They could all be taken into consideration under that report.
Chair, just as a general point, the trees contribute massively to the character of this part of the conservation area. This scheme has been redesigned several times, finessed, redesigned, use those words intermittently, to keep as many of these trees as possibly we can. That includes reducing the size of buildings, removing some buildings, ensuring that the tree in the southeast corner, where Plot 10 was, is kept wholly without question. The trees along the side to the graveyard, to the churchyard, set all those plots away from them so that they're not even under the canopy, so that there is no pressure to fell the trees. Keeping the trees is part of the way that you preserve character and context of communities and how you enable change to happen. Because you are an enabler of change, that's what you're doing here today, making decisions about changing things. So the trees are an important component. Just on your green belt point, I think the simple answer is you could design a scheme that was outside of the green belt, but you've got a scheme, but you're not here to design a scheme, you're here to decide on the set of plans in front of you, and you've got your logic as to why a small green belt incursion to round off and to remove some structures from it is on balance an acceptable way. with their circumstances. It comes back to what's the most important thing, the listed buildings on the site and the conservation area, and you're working in that context, and the trees are a key component of that. So I think you've got a good scheme that does all of that, and you've got a suite of planning conditions that will ensure that those trees that we've fought very long and hard, and the community have been vociferous about their importance to keep, will be kept through the construction and beyond that when people are living there, hopefully in these plans, but in whatever decision you decide to take today. Thanks, Chair. Thank you, members.
Right, Councillor Davis. Actually, just before you start, let me comment to members that I cannot hear asides without the mic on because I've got the loop system working. So if you are indicating something without the mic, I can't hear it. So anyway, Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry about that. Yes, we forget that sometimes when we put no mics on. Yeah, I think for me, well, first of all, I'll start off. I am happy to second the motion that Councillor Firth put forward. I think for me, this seems a development which hopefully, and I think from what I'm hearing, is more of an evolution within the village, because there is change, and there will always, there's going to be change whenever you do any development. I think this is certainly not radical, from what I can see. As I said earlier, it's trying its best, and I think succeeds in being sympathetic to the village in terms of, and the history in terms of the materials and the design. Is it perfect? No. Are some of the houses, larger than some of us would want in an ideal world? Well, that's probably the case, but it is part of that development, and to make it a reasonable development. And the thing that really encourages me, as I said earlier, is the mix within that. It is highly unusual from the time I've sat on planning to see such a mix, most definitely in a small development. So I think that in itself gives me that sort of confidence that these local developers are actually trying to do their best to preserve the character within the village. I think what we do absolutely need to do, and I know this is in the conditions, but there absolutely has to be a real focus on ensuring that the right materials are used, and if there are any proposed changes from the developer, that's looked at really carefully, and that we have to be pretty straightforward in terms of what needs to be in there. I think the issue that Councillor Thompson brought up about the trees, if the report brings forward there are issues with the trees from my perspective, and I don't know if this is something that's written in, or maybe it needs to be written in, then there may well have to be a design change to the layout, because frankly, there's no point having a report that tells you there is an issue if there isn't going to be subsequent action in terms of the development. Now, that might be an issue for the applicants, but I think we have to be very clear about that from the outset. So those are the two things for me that are vitally important. But as I said, on that basis, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Anybody else wanting to add anything now? Do the officers want to come back again?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, the trees shown to be retained will be retained through the construction and beyond of the development. That's the whole purpose of the plans that we've arrived at and you're here today with. I think the developers and his team are in the audience. They hear you loud and clear. We do not expect at condition discharge stage to be told tree needs to go, can we put something there instead? Because we don't want to water down what decisions we make. Yeah? And if there is a fundamental change like that, ward members and the chair can be notified, and if it needs to come back here, so be it. That's fair. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, I mean, just a final couple of comments from me. I mean, I think all of us that went on the site visit this morning saw that there was actually going to be land almost returned to Greenbelt. I mean, there's large concrete slabs and two buildings which will be got rid of, plus the gardens from the houses, which will actually return some land to Greenbelt rather than retaining some horrible concrete and horrible modern sheds. I think, yes, that variety of house sizes does actually enable people in the village to stay in the village, perhaps, because if it was all 5-bed houses, then no doubt some young people or young families from the valley, from the village, would be having to look elsewhere. So I think that's something as a plus in terms of benefits here. And I think, yes, the developer does seem to have taken every opportunity to preserve the listed building status and the conservation status of the village. So we have got a proposer and seconder. Councillor Firth proposed it and Councillor Davis has seconded it. The officer's recommendations. I think there's no changes to the conditions. I think we're happy with the conditions. So we'll move to the vote.
Right, thank you, Chair. Right, so as Chair has said, it's been moved by Councillor Firth, seconded by Councillor Davis for approval as in the submitted report and update. So if I can start with you, Councillor Sokol.
For.
Firth.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
Against.
Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Armour.
Against.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Okay, so the application is approved.
Right, thank you, members. Moving on to the next application, which is item 12, beginning on page 77. It's a planning application, reserve matters application for some works at the former Northern Bowery wastewater treatment works. And Nick, sorry, Nick, I've forgotten your other name. Thank you. Is going to present this. Well, yeah, people are moving chairs and getting coffees and taking an opportunity to take a break. So can we pause the meeting for a moment, please? Right, thank you for that short pause. As I say, we're starting now with agenda item 12, and Nick Hurst is here to present it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name is Nicholas Hurst, case officer for this application. The application site is the former North Byley wastewater treatment works. The site benefits from an outline planning permission for the erection of up to 41,191 square metres of commercial floor space. That figure was following a Section 73 variation of condition application, which members may recall was presented at the Strategic Committee in July 2020, that increased it above the original 35,284 square metres. Given that an outline permission has been approved, the previous approved outline has established the proposed use and maximum floor space of the site. This application is a reserved matters proposal seeking approval of the reserved matters of access, appearance, scale, layout and landscaping for this phase only. Development of the site has been phased and several reserved matters have been approved previously at the site pursuant to that outline permission. This application relates to phase 4, the final phase of the original outline. This image shows those phases. Phase 1, which to the south there. Apologies, phase 1 was the approval of the access road through the site. Phase 2, which is now highlighted, approved 21,376 square metre building. Phase 3 approved a pair of buildings that provided 10,067 square metres. Added together, these units, the final phase is circled in black. Added together, these units fall just below the maximum approved floor space. For the avoidance of doubt, while this proposal represents the final phase of the original outline, this would not prevent new or other applications for full or outline permission on the site coming forward, as evident as the next item on the agenda, which relates to land further south, just off screen. So the proposed building, which I'll share plans of shortly, has been designed to match the appearance of the earlier phases. What you can see here is the larger building, phase 2, on the left-hand side of the plan, of the image, and one of the 2 buildings from phase 3 on the right. And they're the phase 2 buildings. And again, the phase 2 on the left with the application site there. The proposed building would have a maximum height of 18 metres as established at outline stage. The appearance is typical of a modern commercial warehouse, and the footprint is as previously approved, and, as noted, the elevations mimic those previously approved on the site. The building will be set back from the road on a lower ground level, with parking and servicing areas confirmed by highways to be adequate for the size of the building. Landscaping around the site includes the provision of numerous trees, hedgerows and planted areas. The report before members outlines officers' full assessment of the proposal. The outline permission has established the principle of development across the site, including the maximum floor space permitted, which this would adhere to. Various matters such as drainage and traffic generation were assessed at outline stage and managed via conditions on that application. This proposal adheres to all requirements and parameters established by the outline. As such considerations do not fall to be considered as part of this reserve matters. This application seeks solely to the final phases appearance, scale, layout, landscape and access arrangements. As detailed within the report, the plans provided pursuant to these reserve matters have been assessed as being visually acceptable. They would not prejudice the amenity of nearby residents, nor impact the safe and efficient operation of the highways. Accordingly, the submitted reserve matters details are found to be acceptable and, subject to the recommended conditions, officers recommend approval. Nothing further to add, Chair.
We have 2 speakers, Chair. The first speaker we've got is Charlie Brown.
Chair, members, are there any committee members here today that care about the integrity of the local plan, the direction of the planning inspector, and more importantly, the protection of the Greenbelt? Hopefully, you've all had a chance to read through the documents that should have come through by email, which actually categorically show that this application is not right. As we have a new chair, I'd like to reappraise you of the background to this application, but in doing so, I'd like to ask the planning officer a few questions to provide the committee with some pertinent information. Firstly, according to the local plan, the adopted local plan, what was the limit of developable land within employment site 7? I'll tell you, 35,284 square metres. As a result of that, what was the maximum floor space approved at outline for this development site? Same figure, 35,284. Why was this limit imposed? No? Firstly, because exceptional circumstances did not exist for the release of additional Greenbelt. And secondly, to prevent the merger with Bradford, contrary to the role and function of the Greenbelt. If you actually have a look at that crude diagram that we sent out, that shows there's now a clear merger between the two. You referred to condition 32, the amendment to which increased the floor space. What was condition 32 imposed for? No, I'm not going to get any joy out of it. And in your words, to set a limit of vehicle movements to protect the highway network. Your words. At what point was condition 32 imposed to govern floor space? Perhaps Kirklees Legal could step in.
Yes, I will actually. This is your representation. It's not a question and answer session for the officers. So those questions as part of your representation will be answered at the end of your representation.
Okay. I remind the committee that you were blindsided by the planning officer to approve an increase in floor space through an amendment to condition 32 that had nothing to do with floor space. The planning officer will try and justify this increase by saying the development plateaus are already there. The right to build on any plateau is not in question here. The developer is only entitled to another 3,335 square metres of floor space across the whole ES7. You must reject this application in its current format to protect the green belt, along with the integrity of the local plan and the planning inspector. If you approve it, you will be making a mockery of your outline decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. We have Andrew Windress.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Andrew Windress. I'm the planning agent for this application. As highlighted in the officer report, this is a reserve matters application only, looking at the appearance, layout, landscaping and scale. All matters of principle are long established through the local plan, through the established outline, and then have followed through in subsequent reserve matters. So this is entirely consistent with that approach, and the matters that have just been raised are not relevant to this application. They are all already established. As stated, there's an established outline consent, and this current application is just seeking to agree those matters. All those matters relating to scale, appearance, layout, and scale and landscaping are details that are provided and are entirely consistent with some of the previous approvals on the site, as you've seen from some of the photographs. The proposals include new landscaping, including 25 new trees, hedgerows and wildflower planting, and also include electric vehicle charging points for up to 10 vehicles. With the application at the time of writing, there were no objections from ward councillors and no objections from any of the technical consultees. And again, this is entirely consistent with those matters previously considered. So in summary, this is a site that has been considered appropriate for employment development for many years, and the council have been supportive through the local plan process, the previous outline, reserve matters, and then the more recent Section 73 application that was agreed at this committee. I can confirm the applicant is keen to continue the development of the site and ensure the delivery of the major new employment opportunities will continue to come forward in the very near future. We therefore request that you agree with the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Andrew Pinnett, Councillor Pinnett.
Thank you, Chair. If I can go back to the original outline and just remind people, those who were on the committee then, that I decided to vote against that on the grounds that the traffic generation from this development, welcome though it is in many ways, would have a detrimental effect on the local village community of Oakenshaw. I'm afraid that some things that have happened in the past few weeks have tended to confirm some of these fears that I had at the time because of the nuisance caused to residents living on Cliff Hollins Lane. And I don't think I'm going to be shaken in my belief that the problems that have been caused by and will be caused by the actual use of this site will have a detrimental impact on Oakenshaw, largely because the majority of the traffic, whether it's from this site or from any of the others, will turn left onto Bradford Road and go through the village down towards the M62, which is already quite a busy road. Used to be an A road, but it isn't anymore. I'm not really happy with the way things have panned out in this. I'm not against developing the site because it was quite clearly a brownfield site in the green belt that needed to be redeveloped. But I'm afraid that some of my worst fears appear to be coming true, and I shall vote against this.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Any other members? Comments? Oh, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I would, before I make any sort of decisions, like the answers to one of the speakers' comments earlier, and I think they're pertinent questions, well thought through, well delivered, and deserve the answers before any decisions are made. My thoughts are very clear on this site, that it needed to be various B1, B2, B8 sites with as low a traffic flow as possible because of two villages, not just Oakenshaw but also East Byley, that would be impacted by what would be used as a rat run, which would be Cliff Hollins Lane. So my view on this hasn't changed at all from the last time. That it just seems only a couple of months ago since we were speaking about the whole site rather than just this particular one. So I just need the answers to the relevant questions asked earlier. Thank you, Chair.
Officers, do you want to come in at this point? I was going to bring them in at the end on those points, but if you're happy to come in now.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So the first question asked by Mr Brown was, what is the limit imposed in the local plan? There is an indicative capacity. Indicative is not a limit. Floor space can go higher, floor space can go lower. What we have to do is consider the material considerations. As with all applications, the indicative capacity was calculated based on the outline. It wasn't done via any detailed assessments as part of the local plan. It was simply the outline established this. Therefore, the inspector replicated that. We can go higher, we can go lower. As per the application for the Section 73 to increase it, the material considerations were put before you, and based on the evidence, this committee determined that it could go higher. In terms of what was the reason for the limit, it was to do with traffic generation. The 35,000 square metres was determined to generate traffic X. It would have that many movements. As part of the Section 73, it was demonstrated that despite going up to approximately 42,000 square metres, the traffic movements would still be X. They did that by lowering the B2 floor space. Traffic generation is calculated using the TRIX database. It's a national approach of how to calculate traffic movements, and it uses floor space of this use class equals this movement. So while they increased the floor space, they changed the use classes, the ratio, and as such, the traffic movement secured by condition 32 via the floor space was not affected. As to whether we could do that, yes, the condition says you shall not have X amount of floor space of the given floor space of this, shall not be B2 use. So it is within the wording of the condition to limit the floor space, and as such it was applicable to via Section 73 to change that. Apologies though, I can't recall the next question, so if Mr Brown could reiterate that, that would be welcomed. Thank you, Chair.
Mr Brown?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, it was on one of the previous planning applications that was submitted for consideration before this committee, and you actually quoted that it was to set, the condition 32 was to set the limit of the vehicle movements to protect the highway network. Is that your words, as I say? Not mine. And I think it was to try and get condition 32 amendment through committee. As I say, the floor space was set at outline and everything was agreed, and if you look at the previous, there's about 6 planning applications that actually state categorically that the floor space limit was restricted to 35 to 284.
Through you, Chair, without knowing the specifics of those quotes, I can't come back on it, but the floor space was one figure. We then went through the appropriate figure and it was increased, and as I've explained, that was an acceptable planning process. Thank you. I will just ask, was there any other follow-up questions, or were that all of them asked?
No, that was all, thanks.
I directed that to you, Councillor Thompson, actually. Apologies. Yeah.
I've actually got Councillor Sokol waiting.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, police officers, I think we're revisiting our previous meeting here, aren't we? In terms of the decision we've made. No, it seems to be. Sorry. What I mean is the arguments I've heard so far we're revisiting. This is reserve matters. Sorry, I didn't explain myself clearly. What I mean is what I've heard so far is revisiting the discussions we had on the outline application, not the reserve matters. That's the point I'm trying to make. And that's fine. I understand why people are doing that, because they were unhappy with the decision at the last committee. However, and I understand why Mr Brown's raised those issues. However, for me, that's not pertinent to this discussion. What's pertinent are the reserve matters, and I'm not aware, from what I can see, anything that concerns me in reserve matters. And so far, I've not heard anything on the reserve matters there's actually that people are concerned about, that committee members are concerned about. So that's the only point I want to make at this stage. So I wouldn't want us to go back into our previous discussion on a decision we've already made. That's all.
I think you're correct, Councillor Davis. And members, officers are nodding their heads as well. So yes, you are. Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, Chair, I agree with Councillor Paul Davis. Yeah, and the outline planning permission, we discuss everything. We discuss the traffic movement and other things as well. This is the application for reserve matters. Yeah, it's regarding about material and other things. Yeah, well, I've been on the site visit. There already 2 phases have been completed. I noticed it's beautiful, well designed those buildings are, and the road they built through right from the end going to the other phase 4, I think. Yeah, it's a well designed, well work done by the developer there. I think this is, Chair, this is a brownfield site. This is a brownfield. And our members from all cross parties, they always say, why don't we develop first brownfield area? This is a brownfield. We should accept this one, yeah, on the brownfield area. These distribution buildings, they provide jobs to us local people and bring in investment to the Kirklees Council as well, all over, yeah. So, I'm reading through the report. We haven't got any objection from the public member in this report, yeah, and no objection from the council. Did not put any objection in the report. I don't know why some members are talking about something are not right, so and so. Mr. Chair, I don't see any reason to go against the officer recommendation. So I'm happy to go along with the officer. I'm sorry to say, but this is a reserve matter. We have to agree with them. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Are you moving that, Councillor Sokol?
Yeah, I was just about to say, have you moved that, Councillor Sokol?
Yeah, I move it. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. I must correct something. It came up a bit earlier. I didn't respond to the applicant's queries to ward members because I would have been put in a difficult position to take part in committee discussions if I had. So, and I use that remark to answer Councillor Sokol as well. But I still think, given the evidence of what's been going on recently, that I think that needs to be sorted out before I can go along with this.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so we'll stick to reserved matters. I have no challenge whatsoever with appearance, layout or landscaping. The two challenges that I have is the main one, which is access, which is going onto a village road. If you go to the left, it's going into Oakenshaw Village. If you go to the right, it's going into East Biley Village on a single track road that goes then onto main A roads that could be and probably would be, even in the words of the councillor that isn't here today, Steve Hall, it'll probably be used as a rat run. So there's no way, shape or form that he would accept the fact that a large-scale development will be placed there. So that's access. The next is scale. We've already talked 2 or 3 times now about the scale, going above and beyond what we were expecting. Okay, we can use terminology and we can use semantics as far as size and scale is concerned, but it's still a damn sight bigger than what we were expecting, and the access, therefore, is going to be a bigger problem because a bigger site means more traffic onto the same access road going out of the site. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Firth.
On that very point, can I ask if Highways could comment on that, please?
Highways?
Yes, through you, Chair. In relation to the application, we're looking at the Reserve Matters application. The access we're referring to is just access from the internal access road into the plot that they're talking about, not the access onto the wider highway network. That was established as part of the outline permission. So that's the access that we're talking about, i.e. is the access off of the internal access road okay? It is. So that's the access that we're actually talking about, not the access onto the wider network. Respect to the size, because the size can be irrelevant because it's the traffic generation that we're interested in. It depends what the use is. Some large developments can be lower traffic generators than some smaller, so the size isn't necessarily a reflection on the amount of traffic that it will generate.
Councillor Sokol has moved it. Can I second the officer recommendation, Chair?
Any further comments from members? No?
Yeah.
Oh, Councillor Thompson.
Chair, just going back to access again. So what we're saying is that just because something's bigger, it's not going to create more traffic, which I find that not just hard to swallow, but almost impossible. Of course it's got to have an impact. And it really is down to the fact of what that big shed is going to be. Is it going to be a last mile delivery system? Because if it is, it's going to be a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. What we've got on that small single track road outside this access is we've got a primary school. We've got a single track that goes up to East Biley. We've got a double sharp bend that then goes on to Oakenshaw Village Road itself before you can get anywhere near the M62 access. So I'm not clear on how a shed of that size cannot impact the local community as far as traffic's concerned and be a danger to the local residents there. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Yes, I will bring the officers in. I still think we're talking about things which are outside the scope of this application, but still about access. The application isn't about access, but I will allow the officers to respond to that.
Thank you, Chair. I know it sounds unusual, but the Chair's absolutely right. You are being asked to consider the the use of the internal access road. The principle of the building and the amount of floor space and where the traffic routes when it's on the network, it isn't a consideration in this planning application. Your issue about scale, well made, well justified. You can decide whether you think it's acceptable. But with the nature of these reserve matter following outline permissions, you are limited in your scope of what you're allowed to bring to decide on. And access outside of the site, you can't bring that in as a decision. You don't have to like it, it's just the rules. I'm sorry.
Through you, Chair, we'll just come back on one point as well. During the Section 73 application that increased the floor space, there was a condition imposed that this plot could not be a last mile delivery. You mentioned your concerns about this one being last mile. Members did.
This one as well.
This one as well. So this plot, this reserve matters, this building cannot be used for last mile delivery, and that was something that the committee secured last time as part of the Section 73 application. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, I know you've got your hand up, but I will let you have one last word at the end, because it is now for the committee to consider what we've heard from yourself and from the officers, and obviously what we've got here in the report in front of us. Can I just ask, again, for clarification, really? I mean, Councillor Pinnock's point that he wants things sorted out before we agreed this. It's sort of my understanding that if we were to try to sort something out, to use your words, Councillor Pinnock, that would actually mean deferring this application and going back and rerunning. Well, we can't rerun an earlier application.
So please, I'm sorry, Chair. I should have made it a lot clearer. But what's happened is that one of the not this building, but the one next to it, the bigger one next to it, is already stocking up and receiving incoming traffic at all hours of the day and night, and having to get past a barrier on the access road, which in theory, if the whole thing was sorted out, the barrier shouldn't be there. The lorries have to stop to get access. And to me, for whatever reason, this is the users of that large building trying to do things in the implementation phase whilst the site is still in the construction phase. And I think there is a conflict here which is actually nothing to do with this particular application, but it still sets up an issue which is causing annoyance to local residents and has caused considerable annoyance at 4 o'clock in the morning, for instance. And as I say, I repeat, it's nothing to do with this application per se, but with the operation of the site, of which this application is part.
Oh, I'm glad you acknowledge that it's nothing to do with this application. I'll just...
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Yeah, you did explain it to me this morning. It's the operation of the gatehouse. We will come back to you, but obviously it doesn't form part of this decision, so we'll leave it there and speak to you later about it. Thank you.
Right, I think we're in position now to go to the vote on this. We have got a proposer, which was Councillor Sokol, and Councillor Firth has seconded that. I will remind you, just for clarity, that this is a reserve matters application for the scale, appearance, layout and landscaping, and any other concerns that you may have about access, about the operation of the gatehouse, have got absolutely nothing to do with what we are making a decision on here. And as has been said, it can and should be, if needs be, sorted out elsewhere via other processes. Okay, so we'll go to the vote now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so this is a vote to approve the application as detailed in the submitted report. So, Councillor Sokol, just...
I'm very sorry. I only wanted to add, Chair, it does include access, but within the site, just for the avoidance of doubt. You could almost include it as layout, but it's access within the site to use existing approved outline access arrangements. Confusing, but for the avoidance of doubt. Thank you, and sorry to interrupt.
And actually, I just remember I did say to Mr. Brown that he could come back with a final comment, a short final comment. So sorry, can we just delay the vote a moment?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I can confirm who's actually moving into the site, if that helps. It's actually a logistics company that's going to be running 24/7 operations. And with the bridge, Kringles Bridge has already been struck once because they are not using the access road that's actually been built. And it's just going to get worse. We've discussed with the CEO of the logistics company on Thursday, and the figures that they were hinting at pale into insignificance those that were originally planned at outline. But what can I say?
As I said, anything it will be dealt with outside of this application that's in front of us via other matters, which may be planning enforcement or maybe traffic management or whatever, but it's not in front of us today. So we'll go to...
Okay, thank you. So just to reiterate, we're voting to approve the application as detailed in the submitted report. So Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Firth?
For.
Councillor Davis?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
Abstain.
Councillor Thompson?
Against.
Councillor Armour?
Abstain.
Councillor Patterson?
For.
So that application is approved.
Just a very quick pause in the meeting. Thank you. Right, welcome back, and again, thank you for that short pause. We're now going on to agenda item 13, which again is at the former North Brierley Wastewater Treatment Works, and again, Nick Hurst will be introducing this. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Chair. This application, while next to the other one, is a separate entity. So everything we've discussed so far stemmed from that outline application of reserved matters. This is a fresh application, so it's separate, just to clarify on that. So this one seeks outline planning permission with all matters reserved for commercial development, which may include manufacturing and warehouse uses. The elements of scale, appearance, layout, landscaping and access are not for consideration, with the primary consideration being matters of principle. The building, or the applicant is seeking up to 12,078 square metres of floor space. The application has previously been presented to committee at the meeting held on the 2nd of March 23. At that meeting, the committee resolved to refuse the application against officer recommendation. The application was returned for consideration on further information and due to material changes in circumstances. Before detailing this, I will, however, provide a brief overview of the proposal. The application site is predominantly within land allocated for employment use within the local plan. While the red line encroaches into the green belt, no development works are proposed within the green belt as part of this application. This image is just to contextualise this application with the application we've just had. So these were the development plots that we've seen so far. So the application site is in yellow and is to the bottom of all of those. This image shows the application's parameters plan. The development will be limited in the area, to the area shown within the centre, with a maximum height of 18 metres, as per the other applications, and a maximum floor space of 12,078 square metres. Compliance with these parameters may be secured via a condition. And this is an indicative image of what the building could look like, but as all matters are reserved, stress this is indicative. While in an employment allocation, the striped land shown in this image, the blue and red stripes, was safeguarded from development within the local plan. The reason for this was that the land was identified as necessary for potential motorway improvements between the M62 westbound and M606 northbound. This was requested by National Highways when the local plan was being drafted. However, as is fully detailed in the committee report, National Highways no longer have plans to undertake such an improvement. These improvement works were secured as part of their Road Investment Strategy 2010 to 2020. The local plan was published around the 2019 period when they were drafting their 2020 to 2030 document. So in the Road Investment Strategy 2 document, the one that is now in place, these improvement works by National Highways have been dropped. Reason being is when they looked into it further, the costs were identified as being prohibitive. If you imagine what the structure would look like, it is the westbound, so fortunately my laser's not working, but the westbound M662 onto the northbound 606. So to do that, you'd have to branch off from the 62, cross both lanes of this M62, cross the application site, cross both lanes of the M606, and then drop down onto the northbound. A substantial bit of infrastructure, very expensive, unattractive, and big economic and environmental impacts. As well as that, they did further study that showed that to get the maximum benefit from that work, that piece of infrastructure, substantial other works would be required further along the M62. So ultimately, from the Road Investment Strategy 1 to the Road Investment Strategy 2, the safeguard land was no longer required. They dropped that plan. So just to summarise Officer's original report, the site is an employment allocation where employment uses are welcomed. While it was within safeguarded land, the reason for that safeguarding is no longer present. While the application is made to outline, officers are satisfied that there are no prohibitive reasons why a suitable design, which is expected to replicate the other units already built on the site, or another modern commercial design, could not be achieved. The site is well removed from neighbouring dwellings, and subject conditions would not prejudice amenity of residents. Careful consideration has been given to the highways impact of the development, specifically traffic generation and impacts on the local and strategic networks. As part of the previous applications on site, which approved the units being constructed and as previously seen, a suite of highway improvements to the local network were secured. These included junction improvements at Cliff Holland Lane, Milcar Hill Road and Bradford Road, as again fully detailed in the report, and are ongoing and nearing completion. Improvements were also secured on the Bradford Road approach to the M62 junction at 26 Chain Bar roundabout. Both National Highways and the Highways Authority have considered the traffic impact of the development, cumulative with that approved on site previously, and each party remains satisfied that the already secured junction improvements are sufficient to accommodate the proposed development's traffic generation. So returning to the previous committee, the reasons for refusal were recorded as 1. The intensification of the access junction and the impact on Cliff Hollins Lane and Milcar Hill Road and the junction with Bradford Road by the introduction of the predicted generation of traffic indicated within the officer report is considered to be unacceptable, as it would be detrimental to highway safety. The second reason for refusal was recorded. Notwithstanding the position of National Highways, as set out within the officer report, building upon safeguarded land for highways improvements would unacceptably remove potential future opportunities to improve the strategic highway network, namely connections between the M62, M6 and M606, which in turn would benefit the local network at Junction 26 and Chain Bar Roundabout. Following the previous committee, officers reviewed the available information. In summary, we conclude that we would struggle to defend these reasons for refusal at an appeal. In regards to the second reason for refusal, officers held further discussions with National Highways, who confirmed that they have no plans for the safeguarded land as has been set out previously, with the associated works omitted from their current development strategy for 2020 to 2030. They have no evidence to support the reason for refusal and would be unwilling and unable to support the Council in an appeal situation. While the concerns expressed to the committee are acknowledged, planning decisions must be based on the available evidence. The information before us indicates that the probability of a scheme requiring the safeguarded land in any reasonable time frame, such as within the local plans period of 2013 to 2031, is very low. The identified potential impacts of the loss of this land, as in not being able to bring it forward, must be weighed against the public benefits of creating jobs and bringing the employment allocation into use. Officers are of the view that the probability of the land being required is so low, based on the evidence provided by National Highways, that to include it as a reason for refusal would be unreasonable. Based on the available information, officers are of the view that they would struggle to articulate evidence and reasonably justify the reason for refusal at an appeal. Regarding the first reason for refusal, the traffic impact, in the time since the previous committee, the applicant has proposed to remove a last mile delivery element of the proposal. So previously, as it is a speculative development, they don't know who's going in it. They calculated the traffic generation based on a worst case scenario, which was 50% B2, 50% last mile. That created the traffic generation which members raised concerns with. Since then, they have omitted the last mile element, the most severe and impactful element, and converted it to, and are willing to accept a condition for no last mile delivery as part of this site. As a result, the traffic generation would fall by 11% in the AM peak and 31% in the PM peak. That's two-way movements. Both Kirklees Highways and National Highways consider the previous traffic generation to be acceptable, and this amendment, this further reduction, further supports their position. For the avoidance of doubt, it remains committee's prerogative to determine the application as they deem reasonable. However, it is officers' duty to advise members on technical matters. As set out within the report, officers' judgment remains that the application could be supported and therefore recommend approval as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. Have we any speakers?
Yes, we have some speakers. We've got Charlie Brown.
Chair, members, me again. Quite popular today. It is what it is. I did actually have another 3-minute rant ready or prepped to say, but having been through most of the pertinent points at the last application, all I can say is ditto. I'm still not convinced that the planning department have it correct in line with what the planning inspector's expectation was of this site. And I still say, is it possible to put the that last slide back up at all? Yeah, there we go. So you can see the green belt is there. Well, all that has now gone if they build this development. Quite clear, it's gone. You'll never get it back. We now know, as I said in the last application, we know who's moving into the big warehouse. It's a major logistics company with a 24/7 operation. A major logistics company moving from Halifax and Bradford. two sites from Halifax and Bradford. So there's going to be very little jobs brought in because they will move their own workforce. However, I have a serious concern here with the last application and this application over the traffic generation and the conflict that's going to happen. This logistics company is moving in already. However, they'll be expected to be operational within the next 2, 3, 4 months. However, there's now going to be construction site or construction traffic coming in and out of that development to the north and to the south of their operations. It's a disaster waiting to happen. As I say, it's the issue with the Greenbelt was plain for all to see there. I have no further comments, Chair, Committee.
Thank you.
Okay. We also had a submission from a councillor, Matt Edwards, who's a member of Bradford Council. He unfortunately couldn't be here, but it's been agreed that Nick will read it on his behalf.
The majority of traffic, particularly HGV traffic, from the Interchange 26 development will require access through Tong Ward, specifically Woodlands Village. Woodlands Primary School, a small school, is at the junction of Cliff Hollins Lane and Milcar Hill Road, and the additional traffic from this new stage of the development will add to the already increased level of traffic from the other stages. Given the impact of emissions from diesel vehicles on the health of people, especially young children, I do not believe these current access arrangements are suitable. I would also suggest that the increased traffic is such close proximity to a school, particularly with the existing highway arrangements, means that local plan policy LP21 is not satisfied. Similarly, the existing highway layout does not do enough to deter HD movements up Milcar Hill, and the road layout at the junction of Milcar Hill Road and Cliff Hollins Lane means the vehicles leaving the site can easily turn right rather than left. Milcar Hill Road is very narrow, especially between Woodlands and Bailey. As the report notes, as part of 2016-92298, a range of highway improvements were secured, but nothing has been done to secure the road safety of residents in Woodlands. More needs to be done to engineer the highway to prevent this from happening. For these reasons, I believe the application should be refused. I do note from the report that a contribution of $15,000 has been secured for measures to improve the highways on both Cliff Hollins Lane and Milcar Hill Road. There are also commitments to review traffic on Milcar Hill Road, but I don't believe this condition is sufficient. If the committee is minded to approve the application, I would ask for those contributions to be increased to include changes to the junction of Cliff Hollins Lane and Milcar Hill Road to deter HD movements from Woodlands and up Milcar Hill Road, which is unsuitable for large HGVs. I would also request that a condition should be added to ensure final design of these junctions is submitted via planning. I would also like to express my disappointment that given the impact this would have on Bradford residents and the Bradford Highway Network, that Bradford Council has not submitted any representations to this application. This is not something for the committee to consider, but I think this needs noting.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, so we now have Councillor Kath Pinnock.
Thank you, committee. I'm speaking on behalf of Councillor John Lawson and myself as ward councillors in Kirklees. And I have a number of comments to make about this new application. This major application is my concern is not included in the discussion of the original, that's the first phase, that you've been discussing in the earlier item this afternoon. This area of land was not part of that original outline application. So the assessment of the impact of the development was made minus this site. And I think that is really fundamental to the discussion this afternoon. In the update to the papers, the planning officer has answered my points in great detail, for which I thank him. However, the officer does acknowledge that there will be even more queuing on the unclassified former A638 as an access to Chain Bar. And the officer agrees, and this is what he states. and I quote, "The transport assessment has not quantified the increase in queues on the Bradford Road approach to Chain Bar and refers to acceptable levels of queuing, which are not clearly defined." Well, in my view, it should do, because there are already queues there, often very long queues there. And it often takes, for example, 20 minutes for buses to access Chain Bar from the Oakenshaw junction, because it is not signalised junction. In that 20 minutes, according to the traffic assessment, another 15 additional vehicles will join that queue. If these are HGVs, then that will make a very long extra line of traffic for residents to endure. That is the point at which traffic seeks alternative routes. But for HGVs, there aren't any. They're all subject to restrictions. National Highways, this is my third point, states that there will not be any impact on the Chain Bar roundabout. But that's because the Oakenshaw junction is not signalled, and therefore traffic cannot cause a problem because it cannot access the roundabout in the first place. And my fourth point is this: there is a point made within the report that buses won't be held up because there is a plan to put in an extra bus lane on the approach to the junction, but it's only about 20 metres long, so it will have limited improvement for bus journeys, and that is a serious implication for many people who have to travel from Cleckheaton to Bradford or vice versa by bus. The fifth point I have is that the MPPF severe test on traffic assessment is one which the committee should consider. There are already significant queues at that junction, and the additional traffic from the first phase has not yet been included in the assessment. My sixth point is this: I'm very, very concerned about road safety at the junction of Milker Hill and Bradford Road. 90% of the traffic will be turning either left from the development or right into it from an already very busy road. There are going to be no traffic lights there, and this will cause problems and potential accidents, given the scale of the additional traffic that's going to be generated. And I hope that the officer will explain why it has not been signalled. And for me, what is simply not acceptable is that the only provision for pedestrians, and there will be many children coming from the Bradford Road side of the
30 seconds, Kath.
Yeah. The only way they're able to cross that Milker Hill Road is through a traffic island. And with HGVs thundering up the hill to approach Bradford Road, that is simply not acceptable. And it ought to be signalled and be a safe pedestrian crossing. Residents of Oakenshaw have had this large business development created on their doorstep, which has proceeded by stealth, without outline permission, following by a myriad, and I mean a myriad, of reserved matter applications.
Your time is up, Kath. Thank you.
We have one more speaker, Chair, and that's Matthew Shepherd.
Chair, councillors, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I won't take much of your time because we discussed this application at length in March. We know you're very concerned about traffic generation. As is common with this type of application, we included parcel distribution uses as this generates the highest level of traffic for our modelling, which makes the assessment very robust. However, parcel distribution is not something that's likely to happen on this site, as the main operators have all taken space quite recently elsewhere in West Yorkshire, so the applicant's happy to have this removed from the application by condition. This will remove up to 31% of the traffic and leave the development adding just 1 vehicle per minute to the local roads. This is a significant improvement over what you considered in March. The other concern you raised was about potential prejudice to the future improvement of Chain Bar. National Highways have confirmed that they have no concerns about this, and there is considerable space left around the development area which could be used for a future improvement, between 40 metres and 100 metres around the entire development area. This development will not stop a future improvement of the roundabout or the slip roads close to the site. Your officers are also concerned about their position should we appeal any refusal of this application. We agree that the current reasons for refusal leave you vulnerable to an award of costs, and we have absolutely no desire to put the council to the cost and loss of resources associated with an appeal on this. We would much rather positively resolve this position today, as it's clearly better for all of us to avoid an appeal. I want to reiterate our position that this is an application which is wholly in accordance with the local plan, has no technical objections, and has only 8 objections from members of the public. This is a key part of the economic strategy of your local plan. It's a derelict brownfield site which is allocated for industrial development, which will bring a number of benefits. These include about 480 jobs, 23 million of value for the local economy, and making best use of your dwindling employment land supply, which reduces the immediate pressure to look again at Greenbelt land. This is an application which will deliver considerable biodiversity net gain, will remediate a contaminated derelict brownfield site, and is far enough away from where people live to avoid harming their amenity during construction and operation. This application addresses all of the issues raised, and there are no objections from any of the statutory consultees, including your highways officers and National Highways. Therefore, I would ask you to approve this application today, please. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and we've also got the applicant's transport consultant here in case you want to ask him anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all? Right, over to members now then. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I need to make it clear, first of all, I have no objection to a facility being built on this land. I've no objection to additional employers being employed on the site on this land. The challenge, and really the only challenge I've got, is either last mile and or distribution facility on this land. So why? Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I very rarely take any of the stats from National Highways that it won't be a problem, as they're probably the people that approve smart motorways, so it tells a story in itself. The other problem I've got is, in the next borough, Bradford, we've now got a ridiculous system called CAS, which is the Clean Air Zone. So everywhere around the outer ring road of Bradford has become a rat run, because everybody with a van or some vehicle for use for work has got to find a way of circumnavigating around Bradford without ridiculous charges for them trying to trade. So my challenge is, you put a distribution centre at the foot of Bradford and Kirklees. These vehicles are going to try to find any way, shape or form to move around the area without incurring these charges. So that's one point. I am quite happy to approve this, maybe even if there was a caveat to say that the site wouldn't have a last mile or distribution centre on it, as any form of distribution centre or last mile, whichever way you want to spin the title of which what this site will be, is going to cause massive disruption and safety for the local residents in Oakenshaw and East Baileigh at least. And that's why I would object to it being passed as a last mile or distribution centre but no other facility would I object to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Nick, do you want to clarify on that point?
Through you, Chair, I'd just ask if Councillor Thompson can clarify, when you're saying last mile or distribution, are you referring to any form of warehousing development when you say distribution?
I'm talking about any facility that would use vans and or wagons on a regular basis that would cause any encumbrance to the local residents of Oakenshaw and East Bailey.
Thank you. That would be too onerous to impose. We have managed to narrow down the last mile, the frequent small vehicle movements, but to simply say no B8, ultimately it has been assessed by National Highways and Highways that an element of B8 warehousing is acceptable. But I do distinguish that from the last mile stuff. I will invite Chris Dowse from Highways to see if he has any addition to say on that.
Can you take him through the definition of last mile?
We've got a definition of what last mile delivery constitutes, whereas a general definition of deliveries isn't acceptable, but we've got a definition for last mile.
Has any other councillor got a question whilst this clarification is being sought or looked for? Councillor Pinnock.
Can I just refer people to condition 9, please? And I assume that this is going to get reworded of this report because it talks about parcel distribution maximum 6,000 square metres, and we have just been told that parcel distribution has been specifically excluded. So how would that condition be reworded?
Through you, Chair, I'm assuming that you're looking at the original condition list. The report is in 2 parts. It has the updated report and then the original report appended to it. So in the updated report's condition list, the condition 9 reads, limit on development floor space, max 12,077, with restriction to prevent parcel distribution / last mile delivery.
Sorry, I was looking on page 135. My very kind colleague here has pointed out it's on page 106.
Through you, Chair, I'll just jump in with the definition of parcel distribution. Apologies for that.
Of course it is, yes, sorry.
Just verbatim, this is the condition that was imposed on the previous application and the reserve matters site. I'll read that just so you can see what we did last time. The hereby approved development does not authorise the operation of a last mile and or parcel distribution use within the area highlighted in red on plan. Last mile and or parcel distribution is hereby defined as any single parcel undertaking its last leg of a journey from a transport hub to a final destination based upon the nationally recognised trip rate information computer system database definition. I'll just repeat that. Last mile and or parcel distribution is hereby defined as any single parcel undertaking its last leg of a journey from a transportation hub to its final distribution based upon the nationally recognised trip rate information computer system database definition. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I've left it on. A number of observations I'd like to make on this. One of the things that is, well, it won't have escaped members' attention that this site is actually quite a long way from the exit. So I would guess that most of the people working there would come by car, unless some form of bus was instituted to take people from one end of the site to the other. That may not be practical, but this is just an observation. Then, as Mr. Brown mentioned, could be a conflict with existing operators. That if the the operators of the large site there are carrying on their normal work. They will be in the middle of construction work going on at this site right at the far end. I presume that somehow or other there will need to be conditions, or at least an operational management plan that tries to mitigate the conflict that's going to arise from what is a fairly intensive use in that large building. So I just think that needs to be sorted. And I know this again is a bit tangential to this application, but the junction of Cliff Hollins Lane with Millcar Hill Road, I had a conversation with Chris Dowes when we were on the site visit, and I thought the priorities were being changed at that junction to give priority to traffic coming up from this site. But it appears that they're going to have to, there's going to be a stop line that they will have to give way to traffic on Milker Hill Road, and I'm not sure that's a good idea. That's just a side issue which applies to the whole site, actually. And then traffic generation. As I mentioned earlier, I voted against the original outline application, largely on the grounds of the amount of traffic it was going to generate. Therefore, this is generating traffic on top of that, so I'm bound to vote against it.
Thank you. Councillor Firth.
Can I ask, through you, Chair, officers to explain, in the recommendation, it mentions traffic monitoring towards potential traffic management schemes at Cliff Hill and Hollins Lane and Millcar Road. Could you explain what's in the background for this, please?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I mean, that was a condition that we proposed the first time this came to committee, because there was concern expressed by, well, members and other objectors about traffic using Millcar House Lane and Cliff Hollins Lane. And what was agreed with consultation with Bradford Council, colleagues in Bradford Council, because some of those roads fall within their jurisdiction, that we'd established some traffic levels had been established at the beginning when we were assessing this application, and there would be a condition monitoring traffic flows annually on those routes. If they got above a specified level, which I think is specified in the report, they would then look at the potential of doing something to prohibit that. It wasn't thought to be it wasn't considered it would be an issue initially, but to try to allay fears that if it did become an issue we could address it, we had this monitoring regime, a condition proposing a monitoring regime. If that monitoring regime then hit the triggers that we were talking about, there was then the potential, obviously we'd have to be in consultation with Bradford, colleagues in Bradford Council as well, to put some sort of measures. Now, what those measures were hasn't been identified. Because we've already got no access for 7.5 ton vehicles on both routes already. If it was becoming an issue, we could propose something like a TRO that no vehicles except for access only. Those are not. It's a TRO you can promote. They're not very popular because they require the police to enforce them, but that would stop people using them unless they were using them for access to legitimately accessed properties that were up there, or potentially look at some traffic calming measures as an alternative to prohibit people wanting to use it. But it wasn't, that was put more as a regime to try to address a problem if it arose. It wasn't thought that it would necessarily arise.
Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, Chair, very briefly. This application remind one of the meeting I attended long time ago. It was a heavy Boolean planning meeting. I think my friend Councillor Andrew Pinnick was on the committee as well that time. We refused 2 applications. It's a big, more or less similar. I can't give you the details, yeah. We refused 2 applications against the officer recommendation to approve it. Committee refused that. Both applications went to the appeal. First application, it cost $750,000 to this Kirklees council to defend the committee decision. Yeah? Then the officer got a warning. Second application will do the same if you go to defend it. So what happened on that time? The heavy bullion was arrange a extraordinary meeting of that. It's true, yeah? To think about the second, should we defend that application or not? So officer explain what happened on the first application when he cost $750,000 to the council. The second application, I was there on the committee as a sub, yeah. So we listened to everything. That time, the heavy bullion committee member decided to reconsider that application, or not to defend, not reconsider, not to defend this application on the appeal to save council's money. So here, this is a similar application. We got the guidance from the national highways. They're now going to support officers against this appeal. Yeah, they are quite happy on the traffic movement. And there are some other amended line, last mile, yeah, where an officer just say he will reduce traffic 11%, yeah, and the safeguarding land, yeah, which we are talking about, no current plan for the use of the land. So if National Highway won't support us, I'm sure if we go to back to defend the committee decision, it will cost lot of money. It might be million to our council. So please think about that, member. So we don't want to go down to the line. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Davis.
Yeah, thanks. I think the applicant give a pretty good summary along with the officers of this particular application, and clearly, you know, I think none of us would dispute that this will cause some inconvenience, some issues for people who live in the locality, and I don't think anybody's would dismiss that. However, if we look at the evidence in front of us, if we look at the advice provided by officers, if we look on the basis of the Highways Authority and the benefits of the site in terms of creating employment, I find it difficult to go forward with a refusal on this. I would certainly, from my perspective, I feel that we should be supporting the officers in terms of their recommendations to reconsider this and to actually, you know, approve this application for all the reasons that are laid out in the report. It's not just about going to an appeal. It's not just about you know, sitting back saying we're not prepared to do that. That's not the issue. I've voted for things in the past. I've voted against developments which have gone to appeal, and we were very clear that we were prepared to do that. But I do think if you look at the evidence in front of us, for me, it would be very difficult for us to turn this down, and in particular to look at the benefits against the disbenefits, and there are a huge level of benefits to the area in terms of economic benefits. But again, I say, I'm in no way dismissing the impact, and I can well understand people living in the locality being concerned, and clearly we do need to have a rigorous monitoring regime going forward. So the thing I would add to this is, just going back to the comments from Chris, is in all honesty, 30,000 is meaningless in terms of us putting this. So I just want to open up whether there's a possibility of us putting something in there which is more meaningful for if there is a need for anything like traffic calming and any other measures. Yeah. Because having gone through local schemes, I know the cost of those. So that would be my only comment. Let's put something in there which is meaningful rather than possibly some people may think it's a bit tokenistic at this point.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll just reinforce what I said earlier. I have no objection to something being built there. What I have and only have is an objection to what is going to be built there, which is some form of distribution centre, so I'm told. So, first of all, I don't really care about the appeal process and how much has been spent in the past. What I care about is the local communities that will be disaffected by something that could possibly change their semi-rural life. So that is the main thing. I think the access is quite lazy. I don't think there's been really any due diligence into using other. I know that we spoke about it last time about other access and how it would be impossible, etc. But I just find it lazy of us to think that A, we should be using a rural communities road with a primary school on it for a development that could possibly have a lot more traffic than what is estimated, because it always is. I mean, on my ward, we've got a TNT depot and we've got an Ocado depot on our ward. So I know firsthand how it affects us as far as delivery systems, wagons coming in to drop off, big vans going back out at the same time, taking last mile or not even last mile. And then for somebody to say about enforcement, well, I've got experience over the last 4 or 5 years as far as our enforcement's concerned in Kirklees, and it should be reworded because enforcement isn't what it is. So we're never going to do anything about the traffic in that local area if it goes above and beyond what is stated. We all know that for a fact. So we have to look at it in the cold light of day. Something's got to be built there, yes. I'm all for employment, yes. But what I'm not up for is the fact that we just got to roll over because it might go to appeal and cost us some money as far as what is being built there that could affect the people in the local community. And only on that basis, I would ask and move that we refuse it until it comes back as something that we feel will be a benefit to the local community, not a detriment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that actually a proposal that it be refused? I mean, we have got a proposal that it be accepted. Is that a proposal that it be refused, Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for the contributions. I know this one is difficult. I agree with more or less everything that's said, of course I do. I also feel that it is right to make the point that the threat of appeal and the threat of costs are not a reason to make a decision that may cost you in the long run. It's not. It's consequence, but it's not a planning reason to do it. I do believe you've got enough in that planning condition that Nick spelt out for you very eloquently about the specific nature of the use that will be omitted. I do take exception, Councillor Thompson, that we don't enforce. If we don't talk up the role of the enforcement and the service, it undermines the credibility, and we do enforce and we do serve a lot of notices, and the Council's other enforcement powers do play regularly. So I challenge you on that. This is a difficult one. It's the last parcel of land on this allocation. It is a building. It will have activity coming and going. We can manage the construction and a live activity of other units. That's not uncommon. and conditions can control that. So I don't know where to go with it apart from what we've brought back to you with the updated information on where we're at. So I think you just have to decide for or against it, and the applicant can then decide what they want to do. It's some certainty. I'm sorry I can't be more helpful to everybody. Apologies. Thank you, Chair.
I have got some legal advice coming. Do you want to hear that first? Yeah?
Sorry, I can't say it's advice actually, Chair. We're now in a position where we've had a proposer, and I just want to clarify what the vote might be about. So we've had a proposer for presumably approval because the item has been brought back for a material change in circumstances, namely National Highways insistence that there's going to be no safeguarded land and the change in terms of the last mile delivery. And also on the basis that the officers believe there is no technical evidence identified to support or justify the reason for refusal as reached by the committee last time, which is set out at 313 in the report. So that is, I think, the basis, or if somebody were to say, why are you approving this now? I would say those would be the reasons. The reasons now for refusal from Councillor Thompson is what I want to bottom.
Deborah, if I can, just for clarity, at the moment, there isn't a motion on the table as far as I'm aware. I've got down that Councillor Thompson did move refusal. I haven't heard a second yet, and I haven't heard a proposal for officer recommendation either. If I missed it, I apologise.
No,
I second.
Sorry, I've beaten to it. I was going to, before we, I was going to say, Councillor Sokkel's already done it, that I'm prepared to second Councillor's proposal. However, on the basis that we look to increase the figure around the traffic monitoring, because I believe 30,000 is, to be truthful, is tokenistic. So I'd like to have officers' views on what we can do there, in order that if we identify a problem, we don't end up in a situation where we can't remedy it because there isn't sufficient money.
Yeah, I think the £15,000, well, it's £30,000, wasn't it, I think, that was really, you get traffic regulation order. The type of traffic regulation I was suspecting. If you need to go beyond that, no, you wouldn't get much for the money proposed. That was, we negotiated that with the applicant at the time. It would be reliant on us being able to negotiate a higher figure that would do something, because we would be securing it in 106, the money. So it'd be down to us to negotiate a higher figure with the applicant.
Certainly, in terms of this operation, I think we should be able to negotiate that upwards as well. And I don't. Yes, if you have a view on that.
Thank you, Chair. I think you can delegate that matter to officers. Yeah. If we are unable to secure a meaningful contribution increase above the 30,000 that would deliver a range of physical measures, then we'll have to come back to you. But I feel that the applicant's here. It's not for the committee to negotiate around that. If you want to delegate as part of a decision, if you delegate that it's included in the legal agreement to secure a contribution to secure a range of measures, then we've satisfied it. If we can't secure anything, we'll have to come back to you on that point. Is that fair?
Yes. Sorry, through you, Chair. Absolutely. I'm prepared to second on that basis that's very clear, and that if we're not able to negotiate something, that you believe is substantial, that it would come back to committee. Yeah, I would be fine with that, Chair.
Thank you. So I got it the wrong way round, did I? Sorry, beg your pardon. Councillor Sokkel, you moved it. Yeah, I moved it. And Councillor Davis is now seconding it with that proviso. And we've still got the recommendation that it be refused. Is there a seconder for that? Doesn't look like it. So that proposition falls, and we have got a vote to accept the officers' recommendations from this current report. So I think we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
Okay, right. So just for clarity then, it was moved by Councillor Sokol, seconded by Councillor Davis to approve the application as outlined in the submitted report, subject to that additional point about the delegation to officers to negotiate an additional amount of sum to secure a range of traffic calming measures. Is that, that's what we're voting for? So you come. Meaningful improvements, yeah. Okay, so on that basis, Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Firth.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
Against.
Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Armour.
Against.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Okay, so that's been approved. Can we just pause the meeting for a few minutes, please?
Right. Welcome back to the this meeting. We're now on the last item, which is item 14. It's a planning application for change of use of Crown House to provide student-only living accommodation. And again, Nick Hurst is here to present this.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, this application seeks full planning permission for the change of use of Crown House, a substantial 10-storey office block which is currently vacant. The proposed use is 198 one-bed student studio apartments, along with ancillary features for occupiers, including a lounge, gym, laundry and rooftop garden. The proposal includes a redesign of the building's elevation through new cladding as well. So the site is on the edge of Huddersfield Town Centre, within walking distance of numerous amenities and public transport links. The land to the east of the site, donated in red in the above image, is a mixed-use allocation with a local plan that is currently being developed as the University of Huddersfield's new National Health Innovation Campus. The application site itself is unallocated within the local plan. So this image is the front of the building from Southgate, the Huddersfield Town Centre Ring Road. The large building is, at present, considered quite dated in its appearance and is not an attractive feature of the area. This issue has been exacerbated by a bit of a degradation since it became vacant. And there's a rear elevation just to continue showing you what it looks like.
Oh, yeah. Looks like the front.
Yeah, it's not very imaginative. So this plan shows the proposed external works to the front elevation. The building would be reclad with colours to match local stone tones, as well as greys beneath the brise soleil, which would be solar fins. If you just look around the windows, the vertical lines running up down, they're solar fins. They project about 400 mil from the elevation. They'll become clearer on later plans. So what they do is add architectural interest and help with heat control as well. The building will be seen alongside the university's new first phase building at the National Health Innovation Campus, as well as the BT Open Reach. So that's the Daphne Steel building on the left-hand side, and then the BT Open Reach building that you can see there, and then just zoomed in on the university and the proposal a little bit more. The proposed design has taken inspiration from the new university's architectural style, as well as other local design features to help the building harmonise with the built environment. Officers consider the redesign to be a high quality and will contribute to the building becoming more attractive and overall raise the quality of design in the area. The site is adjacent to the Huddersfield Town Centre conservation area and various listed buildings. However, by improving the existing unattractive building, officers are satisfied the proposal would not harm the historic environment. Regarding amenity, the building is well spaced from neighbouring properties and the works would not harm any existing residents' amenity. For future occupiers, unit sizes vary between 19 square metres and 29 and will provide all necessary basic amenities. These sizes are typical for student accommodation approved elsewhere in the town centre. All units would have a good outlook and windows that provide natural light. In addition, students have access to the communal facilities, including study area, garden space and gym. Accordingly, officers are satisfied that future occupiers would have a good standard of amenity. On the matter of highways, no works are proposed to the highway and the site's existing access arrangements would be retained. On traffic generation, student accommodation would have a notably lower daily traffic generation than the site's existing office use. The site is within a sustainable location, with all basic amenities within close walking distance, as well as the university and public transport links. Traffic would peak on the day occupiers move in and out, as is typical for student accommodation. A condition for a detailed strategy outlining how that would be managed has been proposed. Highway officers have no objection to the proposal, subject to their requested conditions, and are available should members have any questions for them. This image is the indicative 3D render of the building. So, the report before members outlined officers' full assessment of the proposal. In summary, the site is unallocated land within the local plan. The proposal would bring a vacant building in a sustainable location back into use in an effective and efficient manner. Therefore, the principle of development is acceptable. The external works would result in a notably improved external appearance of the building and contribute to the visual amenity of the area, including the adjacent heritage assets. The proposal would not harm the amenity of nearby residents and would provide an acceptable standard of amenity for future occupiers. As student accommodation, the traffic impacts of the proposal would be limited and would be much lower than the site's current office use. Other material considerations, such as security, drainage and ecology, have been considered and found to be acceptable. As addressed within the update, concerns over fire risk from the Health and Safety Executive may also be addressed via condition. In terms of contribution, student accommodation is not subject to affordable housing or education provision. However, a figure of £283,173 would be secured towards off-site public open space and £20,000 towards bus stop improvements. 2 public representations were received, which were not necessarily objecting, but making suggestions on design and connectivity. These have been addressed within the report. Officers therefore recommend approval, subject to conditions and Section 106 outlined in the Office report and the committee update. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have one speaker, I believe.
We do. It's David Tye.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members. My name is David Tye. I'm agent for this application and represent Abode, who develop student accommodation and operate several student developments in other university towns. This application is important as it proposes their first investment in Huddersfield, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak in support. The conversion of Crown House to student accommodation will bring a prominent vacant building back into use. The location is sustainable, and the new activity and footfall generated by the building will be transformational for this part of town. The accommodation will be served by a secure concierge entrance from Southgate. There are lifts to all floors of the building, and level access is proposed throughout. Access to the large basement cycle store will be from Old Leeds Road. The glazed ground floor contains all the communal facilities, including lounge, cafe and gym. All of these will look out onto Southgate, providing passive surveillance to the footway and enhancing public safety. The conversion uses a contemporary architectural language. The new curtain wall glazing and other materials have been selected to be in keeping with the university's new faculty building being constructed on the corner of Southgate and Leeds Road. And Abode's proposal will complement this investment with a high quality building which makes a positive contribution to the townscape and to the new campus. The applicants worked closely with your officers to agree the design. They also liaised with the University of Huddersfield and the local student accommodation office before submitting the application. There are no objectors, and we believe local businesses will be supportive due to the increased local footfall and spending that the new students will bring to the area. The committee report describes how the scheme meets with national and local planning policy and with all identified material considerations. It will create jobs during the construction phase and during the operational phase, and will provide really good, high-quality student accommodation for the town. The officer report recommends approval, subject to conditions in Section 106, and I respectfully ask the committee to support this important application. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Right, members, Councillor Sokol.
Thank you, Chair. This building is been empty for many years now, and it's a very prominent site on the ring road. I would like to support this application to bring it back to use next to the already be approved application Huddersfield University building. Can I ask 2 things? One is about street scene, the design of this new building, it will be matching with the Huddersfield University first phase is on the ring road. I don't know what it looks like street scene on there. It will be different design both, isn't it?
Through you, Chair. So it should be popping up now. So it wouldn't necessarily be matching. We don't look for design to copy. What we look is for it to fit in and harmonise with it. So what we've tried to do is get a building that sticks out a bit of a sore thumb. It doesn't respect the historic environment. It doesn't respect modern buildings. We've looked for a design that complements and reflects and respects. So In terms of how we've done, or how the applicant have done that, apologies, there's several things that they've looked to do. So the fins, the brise-soleil is quite a common thing that the university does. If you think of the Oyster building on Shorehead Roundabout, it's got those fins coming out. The Daphne Steel building has something similar to a lesser extent. So it's something they do quite a bit on the buildings. The material palette, this will be cladding, but there has to be some exceptions given for bringing a building back into use. We'll do natural stone colour as opposed to the red brick at the moment, which is out of keeping. So I wouldn't say it matches, but it reflects and respects the surrounding environment and would help contribute to the design in the area.
Yeah, thank you. Second one is it's metro enhancement, 20,000 to bus stop improvement. Which bus stop you are talking about? Is it in front of this new building, or it's on the one stop is on the Leeds Road? On Leeds Road, we already got some contribution by the Huddersfield University, yeah? But I don't know there is a bus stop in front of this building.
Through you, Chair, the improvement is towards bus stops on Leeds Road. The university secured an improvement for a bus stop on the Ring Road on Southgate.
Is there a new bus stop on Ring Road then?
I can't recall if it was a new bus stop entirely or if it was an upgrade, so we can look into that if needs be. But ultimately, the 20 grand was for on Leeds Road. We felt that bus stops towards town centre wouldn't really be used by the residents. So Leeds Road has many amenities on it, so it's realistic that students without vehicles will use those bus stops most frequently towards the cinema, the football, all the other shops along there. So it's the Leeds Road bus stops. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Armour next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm in favour of this. It's a good use of a fairly unimposing, from memory, late 1960s building. Excuse me. I think it will improve the town centre. We're assured that it will be designed to merge in with the campus extensions of the university. So I'm happy with it. I'm prepared to move that we accept the officer recommendation. Thank you.
I too am delighted with the proposed use and the design, but I may have missed it in the report, and it might sound like a fatuous question, but because it was a government building, has it got a sprinkler system in?
Through you, Chair, the honest answer is I don't know. That would be something that would be part of building regulations and that to secure safety.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I think, like everybody else, I was delighted to see this coming up in front of us. Yeah, that building's been an eyesore for a long time, hasn't it? And fantastic to see something repurposed. And particularly alongside the development from the university as well. And we're seeing now some exciting new areas emerging within Huddersfield as well, which again is great. You know, that was really a dead area around there. So hopefully that'll create the footfall and the movement. And again, running right down Leeds Road, you know, that station to stadium sort of corridor as well. So I absolutely support that. So I'd be very happy to second Councillor Harmer.
Can I just ask a quick question? One of the conditions is car park management plan. There is to be 15 spaces underneath the building. Is that meant to be, that car park management plan is about those 15 spaces?
Through you, Chair, it's about those 15 spaces, but it's also about moving in day. So you imagine you've got 198 students moving in on the same day. How are you going to manage that? We've had some indicative details where they get a 20-minute slot, you get in, you drop your bags in an area. So it's, yeah, how will those 15 parking spaces be used throughout the year? But principally, how will you do an effective moving in and moving out day as well? Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Firth.
I'm just wondering about the colours, but it'd be suitable to have it in the Huddersfield town colours, but I had to do it.
Well, I think if there's no other comments, which I don't think there are or is, we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So it was moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Davis, and this is for approval as outlined in the submitted report. So Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Firth.
For.
Councillor Davis. For. Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Thompson. For. Councillor Armour. For. Councillor Patterson.
For.
So that's unanimous and it's been approved.
And that is the end of the meeting. Thank you all.